Riverside Marina in Slidell. I got Captain Kris Robert, Captain Bubby Lamy. We're about to head out to Trestles. Kris, you got a plan for today?
Yeah, we're going to jump aboard the 24-foot Ranger, being that we got a little southeast wind blowing today. And we're going to try to hit the pockets of the North Shore. We've kind of been finding a little bit cleaner water with this southeast wind. And that sounds kind of weird that we're fishing on the north side of the track with a southeast wind, but trust me, it's a pocket of clean water over there, and it's tending to be holding some fish. The technique we're going to use today, we're going to be throwing, 3 8-ounce jig head on matrix shad, midnight mullet, and lemon head, and we're actually going to be slow crawling it, because the water is still kind of stained up. We're just going to barely work that bait, and actually you'll see on today's show how we're barely twitching that bait, almost worm sticking it, because now it's a reaction bite, and we got to keep it in the strike zone as long as we can. When fishing, plastic this time of the year, if the water was clean, you could probably work it a little bit harder, but being that it's kind of dirty, what we want to do is just kind of barely move that bait, give them a little bit more opportunity to find it in that dirty water. But once they locate it, you'll be able to tell that the bite is actually pretty good.
Now, Kris, with these conditions, is it necessary to get out early like we're doing, or can we hold back,
Yeah, the last couple of days has actually been, foggy weather. You're going to see that at some point, probably today, as the sun starts to rise, the water temperature will start to rise, the fish will get a little bit more active. So it's not really a necessary right now, with this fog and this overcast to get out early in the morning. You could probably kind of wait till about 7:30, 8 o'clock, when the sun starts to get up and starts warming up the water. And then at that point, that bite will tend to get a little bit more pressure. Weather conditions kind of like they are for the month of April. It's almost like we're being set back a month. Normally in April we're getting sunshine. We're still getting the high winds, but normally it's 80-degree days with sunshine and a lot of wind. Well, we've been blessed with fog this morning in mid-April. So what that tends to do on the bridges, it tends to make the bite just a little bit harder because the water temperature can't rise to that temperature that you wanted at. To get those fish to start feeding. Once that temperature gets above 62, 63, they'll start feeding. But with the fog and the overcast, it actually kind of keeps that water a little bit chill early in the morning. So if you ever find yourself coming out on the morning where it's a little bit of fog, especially when you're fishing the bridges and you're throwing plastic, you just got to be patient with it until the sun comes out. Now, of course, this time of the year we actually have live shrimp for the first time, in a long time, probably forever. Here in Lake Pontchartrain, so it makes it a little bit easier to get that bite going. So the live shrimp, with the fog, really won't make that big of a difference. When you're throwing plastic, if you're hardcore plastic fisherman, then you just got to be patient with the fog and kind of slow your presentation down and slow the way you're working the lure down, and hopefully the sun will come out today and we can get those fish to bite.
They won't always just be on the bridge. Sometimes they'll hold off further off of the bridge, so don't pass up the opportunity, to cast towards the causeway, out towards the middle of the lake, because sometimes they'll hold way off the bridge.
Yeah, I've seen years, a couple of years ago, when we were all out fishing, and it was kind of weird. We were all fishing the bridge, and we was getting a bite here, getting a bite there, and I actually witnessed a trawler come through who may have been 20 or 30 yards off of the bridge fishing. I watched him catch about 10 fish doing that. So what we decided to do was move off of the bridge about 20 yards and fish down the bridge. And we actually ended up catching our limit of fish doing that. So, it's a good thing is that, you should always pay attention to your surroundings. Trolls always tell you exactly where to fish at. But if you ever see them keep making that loop fishing, that's a good indication that it's probably going to be fish in that area. Just kind of watch what they do. If they're way off the bridge, kind of position your boat off of the bridge, do the same thing that they're doing, maybe cast it down that line. But they'll always be a good indication of where the fish is going to be at, set up at certain parts of the year.
slow retrieve.
Yeah, what I kind of alluded to earlier, it's a nice male trout, 15 inches. We kind of talked about earlier with the overcast, you know, water temperatures fell a little bit low. So what we'll do is we'll slow the retrieve up, you know. Basically, I kind of slowed that to a worm crawl, just barely jigging on it, barely jigging on it, barely jigging on it. And all of a sudden what I felt was I just felt that light tap. You know, it's like to almost signify that they're not real aggressive. You know, they're going to feed, but they're just not real aggressive. They're just looking, you know, kind of, when that sun's not up and that water temperature's not rising, you know, they tend to get a little bit sluggish. Just like we are in the wintertime. We tend to get sluggish when we're cold. You know, when the sun comes out, you know, everything gets active. You know, the fall burn starting to burn off. The temperature's starting to rise a little bit. If we can get the sun to come out, I can guarantee you we can get those fish to start feeding. Get it 2 times and I just dropped it. We came back. And another thing I wanted to kind of talk about, this little red is going to be short, so we're going to release him. But what I wanted to talk about is when the conditions get tough, especially on the bridge. You know, that's why it's important to pay attention to your line. You know, right now we don't have those big fish hasn't moved in yet, those big females right now. So now your males are averaging anywhere between, you know, that 3 to 3.5, 4 pound fish. So basically what we're using today, I'm using a light line, like a 14 pound mono line. I know Bubby's using a 17. And I'm using a real sensitive rod. Because what's happening is, being that we having to slow down the bite, slow it down to a point where we're on a crawl, what we're doing is, you know, you're barely moving it. The bite is real sensitive. It's like they're barely picking up on it. You barely feel the slightest tick. So when you slow it down, it's very important to pay attention to your line. Like I felt him bite the first time and I dropped it, and then I just looked at my line and I saw my line jump again, right? So when the conditions get tough and that bite gets real finicky, it's almost that you got to pay attention to everything. You know, it's not like they're ripping it out of your hand. It's to the point where you have to pay attention to everything. Pay attention to your line movement. Pay attention to when it hits the bottom. You know, sometimes you'll see that line just jump just a little bit. You know, set the hook. The hook set is free.
The colors we're using today is the Matrix Shad, Lemonhead, and the Midnight Mullet. The reason we're using these colors is when it's murky like this, it makes it a lot easier for the bait to look more presentable to the fish. Some of the other colors, when it's murky like this, might not be as effective as these colors are.
You know, we're throwing the Matrix Shad, Lemonhead, and Midnight Mullet, like Captain Bubby alluded to. When that water gets murky like this in the lake, due to the river, the high river, you're going to need something that's going to stand out a little bit. You know, something that's going to either create a shadow, or with the Lemonhead that's going to be a little bit brighter. You know, I'm throwing the Midnight Mullet, and it's not a bright bait, but what it does is it creates a shadow in the water, you know, as if a bait fish is swimming by. You know, and what will happen is those trout will bite out of reaction. They just think it's a fin fish or maybe a shrimp or something that's swimming through, and then they'll just bite out of reaction. Versus with the Lemonhead, where they can see it a little bit more, they'll see it and they can get to it a little bit faster. For the box, baby.
You want me to come with that?
Give me some excitement here, guys.
Oh, I thought he did come on.
Yeah.
All right, this is about a 3 pound male. I want to show you something that we always have a discussion about. Look how dark that fish is, right? Everybody has their theory on what it is. Out there here at the dock, when we're fishing, is when you get those fish with that black back like that, those are the fish that are migrating in, all right? They got to make that journey, so they tend to get stressed, they'll get dark, and coming in. Typically, what will happen is when you start catching the males this size, is where the females are going to show up at too. So whenever you start popping those 3 pound males, 2 pound males, typically is where you're going to find the females too. There we go. the net, get the net, get the net, get the net,
There he
get
is.
the net,
There he is. There he is.
get the net, get the net.
Yeah.